managing and protecting the world's grueling number of endpoints, enabling Tanium's customers to see, control, and protect every endpoint everywhere. Tanium's mission is to provide certainty in uncertain times with the industry's only converged endpoint management. Trusted by the US military and the majority of the Fortune 100, Tanium helps manage and protect nearly 30 million endpoints. Tanium, the power of certainty. Visit securityweekly.com/Tanium to learn more. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Follow us on LinkedIn for updates across our organization, show highlights, and more. You can find us by searching for Security Weekly Productions. All right, this interview is sponsored by Fortra. Pablo Zurro joins us today to talk about the key elements of offensive security, pen testing, and red teaming. Pablo leads product management for Core Security's cyber threat prevention solutions. Welcome to the show, Pablo.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here again.
Yeah, and just as someone who came out of a product management role recently, I'm curious, which products at Core Security are you responsible for? Are you product manager, product strategy for?
Yeah, so right now I'm leading like all the offensive security tools that we have in the company, in the portfolio. So I'm working with Core Impact, which is a penetration testing product. It has been there for more than 20 years. Then I'm also leading the product management side together with Craig Darwin on Cobalt Strike. So I'm doing more like the long-term strategy. I'm working with marketing, and he's leading the development and all the community stuff that he's doing. He's the main contact for the product, and I'm working together with him. And then I'm also working in a brand new product of a company that we acquired like 6 months ago. It's called Outflank Security Tooling, and it comes from one of the top-notch red teams that there are in the world. So they are working on that, and it's called OST, like the short name. And it's like a toolkit to help with Cobalt Strike and with other C2 frameworks. So basically, it offers a lot of tools that will help you in all the phases of the red teaming specifically. And it's like outsourcing the development of your red team. So basically, a lot of red teams don't have enough time to implement their own tools and to make them stealth, and they don't have the knowledge. And those guys, what they are doing is to share with some really vetted red teams what they are doing. They are sharing their research and their tools, and basically they make them accessible to really good red teams to be able to use them and to save money on development. So it's like a great complement that and with that portfolio, it's like we cover the full spectrum or most of it on the offensive security side.
So if I were to describe them by what they do, would it be correct to say Core Impact exploits, Cobalt Strike, implants, outflank, lateral movement?
Actually, Outflank, it does a bit of everything. So they have like for Cobalt Strike is like the hammer, and Outflank Security Tooling, it offers the full toolkit from the in phase. So there's like a tool to create payloads. It's called Payload Generator, and what it does is to work on the raw shell code that can be exported from Cobalt Strike, and it generates a stealthy payload or stealthier implant or more evasive implant. They have also an Office toolkit that generates, for example, XLLs that can be used for the first access to the target through phishing. And then they have some stuff for the middle phase, for the through phase. So there's like a stage 1 C2 inside the Outflank toolkit, where it's like a mini Cobalt Strike. So we call it internally sometimes even baby beacons, because it's really they have a big focus on evasion. So they made a C2 framework that is pretty evasive with not as much features as Cobalt Strike, but to put the first foothold in the network, it's really useful. And then they are constantly releasing through the toolkit beacon object files, and other tools that with a big focus on evasiveness. So yeah, they are like adding a lot of value to what can be done with Cobalt Strike, offering a lot of tools that the red teams need to make Cobalt Strike really more powerful than it is by default.
Got it. That helps. So yeah, let's jump into the main conversation here. Starting with something that's I think everybody's definitions are a little bit different when talking about the differences between red teaming and pen testing. I actually did a series of talks on pen testing back in 2018, and as part of preparing for that, I did some research, did some surveys on what people think of when they hear the term red team. And I think the vast majority of respondents to that think of what back in the day we called a web app pen test. So they thought like application testing or API testing, that kind of thing. Whereas me, from my background, I think more, trying to get into a business holistically, like maybe through an application, maybe through infrastructure, but doing kind of a, social engineering, a mix of everything. So let's jump in. How do you define the differences, pen testing and red teaming, and the differences between the two?
So to me, pen testing is about coverage. So it's purely about coverage and not about being stealth. So the idea of pen testing to me is to identify all the exploitable paths to data or compromise. So using, discover the gaps in security, take advantage of exploits, of bugs, or misconfigurations to find like all the possible attack paths that you can find in a company. At the end, the EDRs or evasion shouldn't be the main focus of pen testing. If I'd approach a pen testing project, I would try to give up on stealth. So to me, it wouldn't be important in a penetration test. On the other hand, on red teaming, the main goal is to provide the customer a learning experience. So the first question that our red teamers ask when they go to the customer is, what do you want to learn? So do you want to learn how to react against a massive attack to reach that tries to reach the goal or to encrypt as much as they can as fast as possible? You want to learn how to face a stealth long-running attack to reach a more specific goal without being catched. So from there, you can set up the goals of the red teaming experience, I would even call it, and start the game. So at the end, to me, penetration testing, it's something more mechanic, where you go one step after the other, and red teaming is more like a mouse and the cat game. So even at the end, the goal of red teaming is to provide a learning experience. So the defenders, the blue team, needs to learn some lesson. So if the red teamers are so good or have such a big ego that their goal is to reach to the target as fast as they can, the blue team won't learn anything. So to me, it should be something that goes step by step and providing some outcomes to the team. So it's the path, the journey is like the important part of the red team. In the pen testing, I would say that the important part is the outcomes and the reports. I don't know if that helped.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's and I think a lot of it comes down to the conversation with the client, right? Like regardless of whether they say they want a pen test, you kind of have to have, I think, a deeper conversation there. At least from a consulting point of view versus, maybe an internal red team or pen testing team. They might have further different definitions of what they mean there.
Yeah.
But yeah, often.
And sometimes. Go. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was about to say that sometimes it's even difficult to have these talks to the customers because they are reluctant to trust you. So at the end, a red teamer should be a the trusted consultant, the customer should understand that you're on the good side. So you will act like a hacker. You will try to mimic the hacker tactics as good as you can, but you're not going to steal their money, or you're not going to steal data. So they need to kind of open themselves and let you help them learn something. So yeah, that's like really important, and it's I think you should have really long and deep talks to the customer to agree on the scope of the engagement, and define what are the outcomes, what are the lessons that you want to get after the test.
Thank you. So I have a question, Pablo, about the security services that you've been talking about, penetration testing and red teaming. What do you feel is currently missing from the approaches of pen testing and red teaming as it relates to customers?
So with pen testing, there are a lot of customers that instead of looking at the engagement as an opportunity to find all the gaps that they have, they think on it as a fight. So it's a fight against the pen testers. So instead of letting them go in and find all the misconfigurations, all the bugs, all the vulnerabilities that the network has, some of them they put the EDR in full blocking mode. So it makes the exercise completely useless, because the goal of the EDRs is to evict and stop testers, and not to learn anything from the engagement. So that's like a big gap or a big problem that penetration testing engagements have. And with Red Team, it's kind of the same thing, but on a different place. So in Red Teaming, sometimes the not very mature customers, they ask you to try to access from the outside, and there are techniques. It's possible to do a phishing, but sometimes it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, some customers are happy because it didn't work, and they say, okay, let's stop it because you're not good enough. You didn't manage to bypass my external security, so we can stop the test. And they don't feel they feel like they won, instead of feeling that they learned something. So there, if you manage to stop the red teamers at first, you don't learn anything. And the goal of the red team engagement is learning something. And we find this like lack of maturity in some customers, that they want to do a red team engagement to mark the compliance check, or just to be cool because they passed or they made a red team engagement, but they are not ready for it, or they are not willing to take advantage on it. So that's like the difficulty. And it's when I talk to our security consultants, it's something that they repeat a lot. So sometimes when the customers are really happy because they stop them, it's in many cases it's because they want it to be stopped. So if they wanted to reach the goal really fast, they would do it. But at the end, they want to provide some lessons, and they want they want the customer to learn something. So at the end, they let the customer catch them on purpose, just to check the processes that they are doing. And at the end, the customers, they understand that that's helpful for them, and that it's better if they treat the consultants as a trusted partner, instead of an enemy that wants to break your security. So that's like the most difficult part, to convince the customer to go through that process, and to be honest on it.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, certainly when performing an engagement, it's important to balance what the customer is looking for, what their goals are as part of that engagement. And it seems to me like there used to be a lot more outside-in approaches to red teaming, so to speak, where the red team would fish, get in, work through that. It seems like because of the amount of time and cost that is associated with that, including crafting really good phishing messages, get the right person to click on it, get that initial foothold, that there's been more of a hybrid approach that has been occurring now, where maybe the external approach and attack perspective and simulation is done in conjunction and as part of a broader assessment, which has an external part, an internal part, where maybe the red team starts on a system and then goes from there. Do you see this kind of hybrid approach or this methodology being a good solution to enable both the red team to show a lot of good value, as well as the customer to be able to reduce or keep their costs in line?
Yeah, actually, it's like that. So if you want to do an approach from the outside, you need to spend at least a couple of weeks trying to perform the fish and wait for somebody to click. And we have in our security consultancy teams, we have a trick to make it a bit more realistic, that assume breach approach. So what we ask when we go for when we avoid the external testing or the phishing attack, we try to make it as similar as possible as if the user clicked the link. So what we do is to ask for a laptop of an account that was from somebody who left the company, that we ask them to enable them, or we ask for a used laptop. And what we do is to phish ourselves. So we do the same phishing that others would do, but instead of waiting for somebody in the customer to click the link, what we do is to click the link ourselves in the laptop that we have in the network, in the customer network. So at the end, technically, it would be more or less the same. So you have the entry point would be a phishing, even if you forced it, instead of getting a vanilla Windows with a recently created account, which doesn't make sense. So at the end, we want something as similar as possible as a customer laptop or standard setup. So we try to use a used laptop. The first step is to phish ourselves, and then we start from there the engagement. And we find it pretty useful to do it like that. It saves time. It saves some money to the customer, and it's the most similar we found to make it similar to a phishing attack.
That makes a lot of sense, and I really like the approach that you mentioned, where the red team shows themselves or does some activities a little noisier. I mean, certainly a red team engagement is supposed to be as quiet as possible, stealthy as possible, take time, be multi-months engagement in many cases. But being able to show some activity and see what happens, certainly that should be something that could be that the customer should identify. But certainly the red team can also talk about as part of what they're doing. We've all heard about the situations where a red team or a pen test gets, domain admins in 5 minutes and gets, compromises Active Directory, or jumps in at that point, or has or as opposed to the longer approach where there's, a lot of time that's taken and maybe they don't get in because they're coming from the outside in. What do you think is the best way that from two perspectives? One, from the services perspective, the company that's performing that pen test or red team, when they are able to get to domain admins in 5 minutes, what is a great way that they can provide value to that customer beyond the I won mentality? And then the second question is, how can the customer take that opportunity and that situation to really gain the best value and approach out of it? And then I have a final question that kind of adds on to that. So what are some of the best things that defenders can do to truly frustrate and block attackers?
Okay, so about the getting the domain admin in 5 minutes, we try to avoid customers with this maturity level. So at the end, we ask for some standards on the customer. So if the customer doesn't have a SOC or a really established security team, we're not providing those red teaming services, and we're offering penetration testing or vulnerability scanning or other kinds of tests that may help them to improve their maturity level. And once that's covered, when they are doing penetration testing, like every now and then, every quarter or every 6 months, and they are not getting many things from there, and they have some processes for detection and response, it's where we recommend to go for a red team engagement. So if the company is not ready, we're not doing those engagements, because it's frustrating for our consultants, and it's really frustrating for the customer, who feel that they are not doing a good job. And at the end, our goal is to help them improve, not frustrate them and tell them that they are doing things really bad. So that's what we try to help them, and with it like links with what I was saying before about the learning experience. So if there's nothing to learn on it, it's useless for us and useless for them. So yeah, that's something that we're normally not doing or not recommending. Then about the last question. So what's the best approach for the customer to detect and to block these attacks? At the end, I would assume that I'm going to be breached at some point. So you need to have the best processes to detect that. So you need to have a good telemetry, you need to have good controls, you need to have good alerts, and you need to test them from time to time. So those red team engagements at the end, they help you to test how your people and how your processes would be responding against a real attack. If they are doing that every day, or if they are doing that every year a couple of times, they are doing some red team engagements on different assets, and they know how to react when this happens in the reality. They will know what they have to do and how to do it, and they will be fast. If they are not doing this kind of engagement and this kind of tests, they will be really surprised, and they will just run and try to switch off everything. They want to solve the problem, and they will be very nervous and won't be able to react properly against the threat. So yeah, we recommend to have those processes well tested, and to have also the security tools that allow to have a really good telemetry on what's happening on your network. I don't know if there was another question or I answered everything.
Oh, no, you got them. Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just pivoting a little bit here, I want to talk about trends in pen testing and red teaming. In general, Pablo, I don't recall your full history, but one of the stereotypes of pen testing is that it's, the pen tester wins every time, right? They or the red team gets in every time, and you make the point of, sure, there's a bunch of organizations, maybe it's a checkbox, they have to have a pen test, but their maturity is just not where they should really be having a pen test. They're not going to get a whole lot of value out of the pen test. It's going to be really easy because they haven't taken care of all the low-hanging fruit, the basics and things like that. But in general, are you finding, you're getting good results from pen tests and red teams? People are reacting to it. It's getting more difficult for the red teamer or the pen tester, or is it still just as easy now as it was 10 or 20 years ago? It's just the TTPs that change. The tools you're using, the techniques you're using evolve over time.
So I would say that the average maturity level of places having pen tests performed has risen over the last several years. Also, EDRs are better and better, and each time more difficult to circumvent. But at the end, there's always a way. So if you're smart enough and if you spend enough time, you will find a way to go in. So it's true that if you see the latest techniques to be stealthier and to try to trick the EDRs are each time more complicated. So I don't know, probably some people in the audience saw the last blog post that the CoverStrike team released, and it's a really nice new technique to do some stack trace spoofing, and so it's stack spoofing. Sorry, and they are doing these kind of things already. So they are changing like all the behaviors of the implants and of the tools that they are using just to be more evasive against EDRs, and that's because those tools and those the companies owning them are getting more and more mature, and it's more difficult to go in and to stay undetected. So yeah, there are still some businesses that are not learning or that are not doing anything, but the regulations at the end they make some of these tests mandatory, and that's pushing the companies to increase their maturity level. So penetration tests, if they let them, if they let you do them properly, they get a lot of insight, because they will give you a lot of possible attack paths, because there are some. So there will always be a way to access, or there will always be a machine that has been forgotten and hasn't been updated. Now, for example, with Core Impact, we're about to release a module or a series of modules to hack and to do pen testing on IBM systems, those like small mainframes from IBM that are still having or inside the core banking systems and are there in the companies, and are sometimes forgotten. And the data that is here is critical to the companies. So there's always legacy machines that can be broken, and that do not have those EDRs and those modern agents installed, where a lot of information is stored. So you will always get value from doing penetration tests. I think if it's done well and by the correct people, and same with red teaming. So even if the evasion or if the EDRs and the antiviruses are better and better, the hackers are also evolving, and the new techniques are really advanced. And the truth is that it's much easier to do a POC of an offensive technique than to have an EDR or a rule detecting those techniques, because it's that one goes inside a product that should be stable, that should be secure. So at the end, the EDRs and the antiviruses are always behind the techniques of the attackers. So there's always place to learn and to improve and to have a good experience on a red team engagement.
I really like that answer, because you talk about the nuance of how things have gotten better, but also how there's additional challenges in newer research. And that mirrors what I've seen with security assessments at Trimark. When looking at these environments, when looking at Active Directory, sure, the security of the environment has gotten better, but then there's more research around Active Directory certificate services, for example. And then all of a sudden, there's a whole lot of other opportunities for the attackers to compromise AD because of that. You mentioned IPMI. There's been a lot of research and issues around that, especially with HP ILO and the work that Airbus Security did, and HP iDRAC and others, and certainly with the Eclipsium release about firmware and IPMI systems and the system on the chip that leverages all of that. There's a lot of opportunity there as well. The attackers will go where the opportunities are, and I think that mirrors very well with what pen testers and red teamers are doing. We're seeing that with VMware now with ransomware. How do you feel, or how do you see that the current scourge of ransomware has really defined or potentially redefined how pen testing and red teaming approaches an engagement, or has it at all?
I think it's there. So it's a big worry of the companies to be hit by a ransomware. So they are trying to protect themselves, but at the end, the techniques are the same. But instead of deploying a malware that provides access to a different place of the company, or that lets you steal data or destroy data, an implant with a different behavior. So at the end, besides the techniques to detect that there's an encryption ongoing, it's basically the same. So at the end, a ransomware gang, what they need is to breach the company from the outside through a phish or through a vulnerability like what happened with the VMware vulnerability, and they have to get in. And once they get in, they move laterally and they try to encrypt the critical assets of the company to try to get the ransom. So it's true that especially when we're doing red teaming or when there's a red team engagement, there are some customers who ask you to mimic a specific ransomware attack. So it's they what they say to our consultants. It's basically, hey, I'm scared of that one, or there's a big hype on this ransomware and how this APT is acting. We want to be able to react against an attack like this. So there are some ransomware gangs that what they are doing is to throw a massive attack, and they want to reach the target as fast as possible. So I was reading the other day about a ransomware that was encrypting the systems in less than 3 hours after the breach. So basically, they are doing they are using low hanging fruit and they're going in as fast as possible and encrypting as fast as they can. And that's something that could be simulated. In some cases, when we do that, the customers tell us, "Hey, but I catch you really fast," and it's okay. You asked me to try this kind of test, so you're probably ready to fight against those type of ransomwares. There are other attacks or other ransomware gangs that what they do is like more targeted attacks, and they are stealthier. They perform long-running attacks to reach a more specific goal without being catched, and that's something that could be also simulated. And we'll use like another APT persona for the tester. So they will behave as another different profile, and the tester should be able to adapt to what the customer needs on terms of testing what they need. So yeah, I think that the approach at the end it's like really basic what all these attacks are doing. So it's breaching, going in, setting persistence with an implant or whatever, and then they can choose if they stay there to steal as much data as they can, or if they try to destroy the environment as fast as they can to encrypt the systems and ask for ransom.
Yeah, one of the things I think that's interesting there is, just an observation I've made over time. Like 10, 11 years ago, people were giving talks about how pen testing, and red teaming didn't really simulate adversaries because it was hard to. A lot of people were getting popped by exploit kits. Browsers weren't all that secure back then, so you could just browse to a website, and people were just getting popped with malware all day long. And the malware would be unique, so antivirus wouldn't catch it. And it's just tough to get a company to allow you to just start infecting machines with malware back in those days like that. But what you say is interesting. Like what these ransomware crews are doing is really basic. Yeah, every time I look at a detailed post-mortem of a ransomware attack, I'm looking at all these steps. And I'm like, this is just a very basic pen test. What's going on here? So it's almost, I think in our, an advantage today, because when you get a pen test, I think or a red team assessment, it very closely mirrors what the attackers are doing today. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, actually, it's especially with the red teaming. I think that pen testing, as it goes more for coverage, at the end you want to detect as many vulnerabilities as you can and as fast as you can to avoid having low hanging fruit on your environment. But with red teaming, yeah, it's like you say. So when we have the the offer for red teaming. I was the other day I was like talking with one of our consultants, one of the leads of the consulting in the Outflank team, and he made a really great example. So when they are talking to the customer, they are showing themselves as the characters or of a video game. So it's like you have different points for each one of the strengths of the character. So for example, you have like speed, stealthiness, I don't know, fast moving, whatever. So depending on the attack that you want to emulate or simulate, you're choosing one of these characters that maps or kind of maps the APT that you're trying to mimic. So in our case, we think that there are like two approaches. So to try to mimic the techniques that or the way of acting of a gang of an APT, or you can run the same attack that was performed. So for example, if you want to mimic a specific attack that was described with all the actions one by one that were taking to breach a company. So if you do that, you're like simulating malware or an issue or breach that already happened. So the next one won't be the same. So if you do that, if you really mimic a previous attack, you'll be like 6 months old on your engagement, because it's something that already happened, and the attackers learned from that. They won't do the same thing again. So they will try something different. So at the end, the important thing is the behavior. So as a tester, to try to behave as if you were one of those gangs and think like they would think. So if there's like a gang where they do like massive attacks, so you need to act really fast. You need to attack as many targets as you can, as fast as you can, to try to find one gap to go in and do your bad stuff. If you want to mimic, I don't know, state nations, for example, they probably have a more specific target, but and they will act differently. So they will probably try to access a single point. They will do much more research on the outside to find all the attack surface of the target. They will study much more what's going on there and where they can find the breach. And when they are pretty sure on where to attack, they will perform their attack, and they will go through it. But you need to adapt. I think that adaptability and knowing, really, I'm repeating myself a lot, but really knowing what the customer wants to learn through that engagement, I think it's like the basic point of having a successful engagement.
Well, you're repeating the important bits, though. So that's, I mean, that's what we want. Reiterate those points. Katie, I think you had a question.
Speaking of successful engagements, what are some of the things that companies can do when they hire you and your team that are some of the best things to throw your team off? What are the things that make it hard for your pen testers to do your job? In other words, them being uber prepared. So what are some of the tougher engagements you've had, and what did those companies do so that your teams actually came up against some good defenses?
Actually, I think that the most difficult companies to breach are the ones doing those exercises often. So when they are doing this kind of red team engagements or red teaming gigs, a lot of times they learn how the attackers are acting, and what are the controls that they have to set up in their systems to be able to detect those attacks. There are a lot of some companies that instead of having like controls to detect attackers, they have controls to detect red teamers. So instead of it's like what happens also with Cobalt Strike. So EDRs and antiviruses are in many cases building controls to detect specifically Cobalt Strike, But if you change it a bit, this control doesn't work anymore. So it's really difficult when the companies really have controls that are looking for the consequences of the attack, or for the result of what a red team or what an attacker would do, instead of the behavior of the action that is being taken. So, for example, there are pretty simple controls. For example, on the registry, that you can check some let's say some registers in the Windows registry. You can have a control to check that it hasn't been modified, and that's a pretty simple control that could really help you detect an enumeration process, for example. So every or most of the red teamers, attackers, anybody that is testing an environment, they will do a user enumeration. So if you put something as simple as you put a fake group in the Active Directory, and if somebody reads that entry, you know that somebody is enumerating your Active Directory. Is a really simple control that many people are not doing, and it's pretty useful to detect that somebody is looking for information there. So when the teams, when the companies have experience and they know what they're doing, and they test their environments constantly, or really many times, they learn a lot, and when they learn, it's much more difficult to find gaps on their security. At the end, normally there's something we can go through, or where the red teamers can use to go in. So there are always tools. There's always some misconfigurations. There's always something forgotten in some corner that you can leverage to access. I don't know of any empty report, basically, after a red team engagement or a penetration testing engagement. But it's true that in some companies it's really difficult to reach the goals.
I know we're short on time here, but I have one quick question before we have to wrap up here, and Adriana will take it over. But in terms of the red teaming as a service, or automated red teaming, there are some companies with these products or platforms. What do you think about those? Are they helping the industry? Are they hurting the industry? Do people think that they can replace you with that automated platformized red team test?
To me, it's abusing of the term, of the red teaming term. So if a red team is really the people performing it, it's really important. And that's why companies are rotating a lot of times their consultants, because they want different point of views, and they want different ways of doing the same thing. And that's why I think that the human part here is really important. And if you're trying to automate that, at the end it's not red teaming at all. It would be more similar to breach and attack simulation, I would say. So it's trying to mimic TTPs and execute one after the other in specific order, following a workflow. And you will, same as with penetration testing, you will find gaps, or you will find misconfigurations, but it's much more difficult to decide. So at the end, a pen tester or a red teamer needs to take decisions during the test. If you try to automate all that, it will be much more noisy. It won't be similar to what an attacker does, and it will. To me, it's not useless. It's something that is it's pretty useful. I would say that is like a step before penetration testing. You can have vulnerability management. You can have breach and attack simulation tools, even if they are called automatic pen testing or even automatic red teaming tools. To me, that's before using operator-driven tools to perform the tests. They will provide results, but it's not the same thing. I think it doesn't avoid doing an actual pen test or an actual red team engagement.
So yeah, basically it sounds like you're saying you pull out the human ingenuity, the creativity, that goes into finding another way in when something fails. It can't really be red teaming.
Yeah, actually, you need the human intelligence to be able to pivot and to change your approach and to do something completely different to what you were testing or to what the previous tester did. To be able to, when you find a roadblock, you need to be creative, and those guys are pretty creative.
Exactly. I think I'm going to throw over to Sean for one last question before we wrap up here.
Thanks, Adrian. So, Pablo, one of the things that I continue to see popping up in threat and breach reports is the use of Cobalt Strike by attackers. Certainly, there's a bit of a Pandora's box situation here where there are Cobalt Strike versions already out there. But my question for you is, what are some of the things that Core Security is doing to mitigate the use and capability of this useful offensive tool, Cobalt Strike, by attackers?
So there were a lot of actions that were taken in the last couple of years to try to avoid that. So we made changes into the product to make cracking more difficult. So one of the things that we discovered is that before, I think it was 4.5, before the 4.5 version, a couple of weeks after it was released, there were cracked versions of the product all around. And since we released 4.6, there haven't been any cracked version. So what we're seeing in the wild are stolen versions. So there are some customers that are breached, and the hackers, they steal the full folder and they are using it. And we're inside of our company. We have a department that is working with the authorities, taking down those servers. And they are actively working on that, on taking down those servers. And we're also working in the Cobalt Strike product side to improve the security of it. So we're right now on the 4X versions, and we're working on 5 version. That would be a really big thing on the security level. So we're change how Cobalt Strike works, how Cobalt Strike is built, and how the licensing works, and we'll be making a lot of changes to improve even more that security level. So for now we're adding new features in the product to make it more difficult. We're also adding features in the product to be able to fingerprint rogue beacons or rogue team servers that are not used for good stuff. So we can link them to the original customer, and we collaborate with customers to help them to understand if they were breached and when and how. And we also collaborate with the authorities on the taking down of those servers. So as a company, as Fortra and as the Cobalt Strike team, it's a really important thing, that product security, and we're doing our best to avoid that. And actually, we're hearing from we had that happened in some customers, that they told us that they are using other products besides Cobalt Strike because it's they are the gangs and the bad guys. In the last times, they are seeing that Cobalt Strike is more difficult to crack, more difficult to bypass at the security level. So they are moving to other C2 frameworks that make it easier. So yeah, that's something that is happening, that we're working on it. Where at the end, our goal is to make companies more secure and not to make hackers more efficient. So yeah, we're fighting against that, and we're doing our best to reduce that usage of Cobalt Strike by the nefarious actors.
Yeah, thank you for that, Pablo. That's a great answer. I think it's an important question, and it's it sounds like just raising the bar enough, will push them to use other things, and I think that's really important. But yeah, thank you for the conversation today, Pablo. Excellent. I think some of the best answers I've heard to some of these common questions I think we've all had or discussed over time, especially your answer to automated red teaming. I loved your answer there. But yeah, Pablo, thank you so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to be here again. So see you next time.
Yep. See you next time. And make sure you visit securityweekly.com/Fortra to learn more. There's a lot of great resources in the show notes from today that Core Security has. Some videos, some webinars, some guides, data sheets, good stuff there. Stick around. We'll be right back in a few moments chatting about human factors in cybersecurity with Dr. Inka Karppinen.